Hi guys, it's Chantel here, and I want to share today my favorite reads from 2019. I would describe 2019 as the year I discovered fantasy, at least like the last half of the year, and so you can kind of see that in the books that I'm going to be sharing today. According to Goodreads, I read 72 books in 2019, which is kind of just like average, middle of the road, not too bad. Not terrible, but not the best I've done. So yeah, let's just get into the books. I'll start by the ones that I read first in the year that I considered 5-star, and then just continue throughout the year. The first book that I considered a 5-star read was The Giver, and in this story we follow Jonas, who lives in this community where everything's perfect. There's no pain, there's no trouble, but there's also like no love, no passion, anything like that. And in the community, when you turn, I think 12, everyone gets picked for a job, and his job is the giver, which is the one person in the community who stores all the memories. So all the pain, the memories of war, and also like the joyful memories. And so it just follows him in his journey. I did end up reading the rest of the books in this series throughout the year, and this one was by far my favorite. I wish this would actually have just been like a standalone and it had been wrapped up just like a little bit better at the end. But overall, I considered this one a 5-star. The next 5-star that I read was my first Frederick Bachman, and he appears on this list twice for good reason. The book that I read was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, which is a super short book. I think it's like under 80 pages, and I was crying by the end. Like literal tears rolling down my face. So if a book can do that, that's a 5-star book. In the book we follow this old man who is, I think he's telling us stories or like his memories, and he's telling them to his grandson. So this old man has dementia, and we just kind of follow him as he talks to his grandson and their relationship. And I don't know, I don't even have anyone in my life with dementia, and I feel like the book hit me so hard, and it's just powerful. I can't wait to get my hands like on a copy for myself. The next book that I consider 5 stars was The Story Girl by L.M. Montgomery. Now, I grew up watching the show Roe to Avonlea. It's a Canadian show, was set in the islands, and if the show follows Sarah Stanley, and I didn't realize that Sarah Stanley is also the story girl. So in this book, Sarah Stanley goes to live with her relatives, I think her aunt and uncle and some cousins, and the book is actually narrated by her male cousin named Bev, and I just thought it was very interesting that L.M. Montgomery chose a teenage boy to be the narrator of a book called The Story Girl, and it's really well done. So we kind of follow them just in their everyday adventures. They kind of live really boring lives, but the story girl kind of spices things up with the stories that she shares and makes them think outside the boxes a bit. This was definitely one of my favorite L.M. Montgomery books I've read so far. Next up is my second Frederick Bachman on this list, and that is A Man Called Eva. And when you hear it, kind of like the synopsis of the book, it doesn't sound like it's a book that people should be raving about. And I know I'm late to the game here, everyone already knows about this book, but it's about an old man who's just like a crotchety old man that kind of just gets on his neighbors for everything they do. You know, they don't follow the directions that have been laid out, and he just wants everything to be perfect. And he's gone through kind of a rough spell and is quite depressed, and he can't help but feel for the man. I was listening to this on audio and just found myself trying to like find different things in my house to clean so I could keep listening to the book. It was that good. And then of course at the end, once again, tears, because apparently that's what Frederick Bachman does to me. So that one was superb. The next book on this list is actually a middle grade book, and I read the hard copy myself, and then I knew my family would enjoy it, so we've been listening to the series on audio ever since, and that is On the Edge of Dark Sea of Darkness. And okay, first of all, one differentiation between the hard copy and the audiobook is the hard copy includes a lot of like footnotes about this fantastical world, and the footnotes are hilarious. I know some people might not like it because it kind of pulls you out of the story and explains things. You don't need to read the footnotes, but I found them to just be like the perfect amount of humor that I really appreciate. So that is not in the audio, unfortunately, so I also want to buy the hard copies because they were just something special. Okay, so the book and the series follows this sibling set. Janner is the oldest one. He's kind of like our main character. And then he has a brother named Tink and a sister named Lily. And they live in a town that is kind of controlled by this group of beings, I guess we'll call them. They're called the Fangs. And they are just kind of, they're looking for something, but they don't know what, the kids don't know what they're looking for. And this group of Fangs just kind of makes life miserable for everyone around. And I feel like the author, Andrew Peterson, did a great job, you know, putting a lot of thought into the different characters that he created. He's got Ridge Runners, and my favorite is the Toothy Cow, which if you get the actual paper copy, then you can see a description, a picture of a toothy cow, which is hilarious. Apparently you do not want to meet them in the woods. Yeah, so that's a really good middle grade series. We're in book 3 out of 4 so far. And it's one that not only do middle grade people like it, but also adults. And I feel like it kind of just encompasses everyone. My next book, and the one that I feel like really got me into fantasy this year, is Mark of the Raven. This one follows, her name is Lady Celine, this teenage girl who comes into power. So she lives in this house, the House of Ravenwood. And there's different houses throughout the land, but her house has a certain power called dream walking. And she discovers pretty quickly, once she inherits this power, that unfortunately her family has not been using their power of dream walking for good, but kind of the opposite. She finds out that they get paid to assassinate people through dream walking. And so yeah, the book follows her. And this is, I think it's going to be a trilogy. I'm not sure if it's going to be longer, but book 3 comes out in like a few weeks here, and I just like can't wait to get my hands on it because this was one of my favorites from the year. And then like following my high from Mark of the Raven, I wanted to get my hands on more fantasy. And this book, I mean the cover, hello, gorgeous. So Fox is a historical fiction fantasy book. So it follows, the historical fiction part is the gunpowder plot, which happened in England in, I'm not even sure, 17th century London. And when Guy Fawkes and his gang of followers, whatever they were called, tried to kill the king. So there's that part of the book, but then there's also this fantastical element where people have masks, and depending what mask you have, decides which color you can control. So if you have like a gray mask, then you can control everything around you that's gray. And I found myself kind of looking around me to being like, okay, so if I can control that color, like what here can I all control? And yeah, I don't know, I really liked it. I had, I don't know what, the pleasure maybe of being in England when I was 18. I was an au pair in England, and I was there during what they call Guy Fawkes Day or Bonfire Night, and I got to see all the fireworks while they celebrate the fact that, you know, Guy Fawkes was caught and the gunpowder plot was foiled. So I really love this book. I have since bought myself a copy. I read the libraries originally, and I can't wait to like reread it and mark it all up. And I mean, yeah, like the cover, gorgeous. The next book that I picked up was also fantasy, and was one that I noticed Murphy recommending a lot on her channel. I was like going back and watching a bunch of old videos, and the book was Duel of Fire. This one follows our main character named Dara Ruminor, I believe, and she's a duelist, like fencing, and yeah, so she wants to kind of fight in this cup, duel in this cup, but her coach kind of makes her have the bad end of the deal, where in order for her to get that extra training, she has to train this person that he has told her to train, which just so happens to be the prince. I kind of don't like those kind of like setups. It's like, oh wow, this pretty girl all of a sudden has to teach the prince, who also is a good-looking guy, how to duel. But there was some really cool fantastical elements woven in there. So they have, I think it's like the series follows a number of different people in different towns, and they can control different elements. So in their city, fire is often the element that can be controlled, and like certain people have this power. And yeah, I don't know, I can't say a whole lot without kind of telling the whole story, but that one was really good. I did read the second book and maybe part of the third. I can't remember if I finished the third or not. The first one was by far my favorite and made the most sense. And once again, I kind of wish it would have just been a standalone, but I would recommend that book. And my last 5-star of the year was Tainted. It is a part of a duology, I believe, and we follow Cat Bloodmane, who I feel like this is kind of maybe like a Frankenstein retelling. She has certain powers that people don't know about, that she doesn't really know how to control, and she's trying to figure out how she got them, while trying to keep them hidden from the people around her, especially the people closest to her. And it's considered a steampunk novel, which is kind of like a genre I didn't even know existed, and I really enjoyed it, as well as the second one, though like always the first one was my favorite. Yeah, so we follow her as she tries to figure out what's going on with her, how to control these powers that she has, how she got them, and it's kind of like a good mystery kind of woven in amongst the fantastical elements. So those are my favorite books from 2019. I'm so excited for 2020 because I feel like I already have a lineup of books that I'm pretty sure are gonna be 5-star books, and I already have more than 9 books on that list. So I'm a little worried about how long next year's wrap up of favorite books is going to be. But anyway, so 2019 was the year of fantasy. We'll see what 2020 is. I would love if you would leave me a comment below and just tell me like 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 of your favorite books of 2019.